Good evening and welcome to tonight's Shiur. First of all, I'd like to wish a Mazel Tov to Mr and Mrs Pinchas Rabin of Edgware, who sponsored the Shiur tonight in honor of the engagement of their youngest son, Shaul, Rav Mordechai Shaul, to Miss Etty Halperin of Monsey. And lots of nachas and in good health. I'd like to also before that although many times Mr and Mrs Rabin have been sponsors of the Shiur, there is room for sponsorship for other people also. Anyone wants to do so, you're welcome to do so, and be in touch in the future. I'm going to take this opportunity also to share with you a personal simcha, which is just now 1 month since we made chasana, and we at the chasana gave out this sefer, Nasivim Halocho Minhag. It's a collection of about 70 halacha articles which I've written over the last 40 years since I was in Kollel, and some of them are quite recent, and a couple of other very beautiful addenda. There's something about Dayan, but there's a couple of other historical value inyonim, and anyone who's listening wants to get hold of a copy, you can be in touch and I'll try to get one your way. Now let's go now to the first question on our Shiur tonight, and that is someone's asking me about the word dekudjא in Kaddish. And as you can see, you've got here 8 copies of different parts of the Annotated Sidur, which is published. It's now about almost 20 years since it was published by Kahos, and it's inconsistent. That you see the first one, it says dekudjא without a star, without the asterisk. This one and the third one does have, the fourth one does have, the fifth one does, the sixth doesn't, seventh does, and the eighth does. It's inconsistent whether there is the asterisk or not. Just to fill you in, that the asterisk is there to tell you whether the Sheva is a resting Sheva, an inaudible Sheva, Sheva-Nach, or is it an audible Sheva, Sheva-Na, a moving Sheva. And the asterisk was introduced by the printer in Vilna back in Tov Reish Ayin Aleph as a symbol to tell us that this Sheva is a Sheva-Na. So the inconsistency is in what it is, but what is the question? What is correct? Is it Shmei Dikduk Brichu or Shmei Dikudjא? Is the Sheva of the Dalet, is a Dalet with a Sheva, is it brought out, or is it a silent Sheva? That is his question. Okay, so now let's go back to, so what you have on the second screen is from the Vilna print, which I mentioned just now, of Vilna Tov Reish Ayin Aleph, and that's from which the Sidur Tilas Hashem was reprinted back in Topshin Vov, approximately. So there was it's a photocopy of this Sidur, and as you can see here, the word dekudjא is actually not with a Vov Malupum, but rather with a kubutz, or 3 dots. And to explain a rule here, and that is we've got the vowels are in 5, there's 5 groups, well, there's 5 and 5 vowels. 5 are tenuas gedolos and 5 are tenuas ketanos. So that komatz is a tenua gedola, a more stressed one, and its parallel counterpart, tenua ketanos, is a patoch. Seire is the tenua gedola, the more stressed one, and the segol is the counterpart, the tenua ketano. Then we've got we've got a cholom, and then we've got what's called a kometz koton, which would mean when a cholom, like the word coil. So that's a cholom. Now, sometimes the word coil is connected to another word with what we call a makap, with a hyphen. So kol davar. So at that point, the coil is reduced to a kometz. Now, the Sephardim tend to pronounce the regular kometz as we pronounce a patach, but the kometz koton, which is a diminished cholam, they pronounce it also as a kometz. So they would say kol davar, because the kometzin of the word davar, dovor, or davar, is a kometz, what we call the kometz godel, and that is diminished to a patoch in Sephardi pronunciation, whereas koil, reduced to kol, does not come down to kal. So that the kometz koton. So for Ashkenazim, we don't have much of a difference between kometz koton and kometz godel. You look in Sephardic Sidurim, they do have, let's say in the Imre Fi Sidur, I've noticed, they will have the kometz koton, will have the vertical part longer as a way of indicating that this is a kometz koton, which therefore should be pronounced as kometz koton. We have chirik. There's two ways of a chirik, E and E. So the tenua gdoila is the E, and the tenua ktano is the E. And finally, what's relevant to us is the U and U. Let's say in the word bull, it's also, that would be a kubutz, it's a shortened U sound. And then in the word room, which is a more stressed U sound, that's one's a kometz godel, sorry, one's a shuruk, one's a tenua gedola, one's a tenua ketana. Before coming back to our discussion, I just want to point out something fascinating, which Rav Broin of Crown Heights pointed out to me a good few years ago. But in the word kometz, we have the vowels of the name kometz. I've got a kometz and a patoch. In the word patoch, we've got a patoch and then a kometz. So you've got, in both of the names, they've got their primary nikud, and then they have the second consonant will be of their counterpart. So too in seire. So it's the A and the air, and I guess according to that it should be segel, but never mind. And then we've got the choilom, the oi-o, because as I said, the coil will be reduced to a kometz koton, that will be the choilom. Chirik. So here we have the E and the ear sound, and ku boots. So this is the first one is the shorter one, and then we've got the longer one, the more stressed one. That's the three dots in the diagonal, and then we've got the vov with the dot. So then the primary one is the u, the stronger one, and the counterpart is the shorter one, which is the three diagonal dots. So that's in the names of, you see here the kubutz and shuruk, that they've got both nikudim, but in the opposite order, because one is the main one and one is the counterpart. Let's come back. So now we have here a rule that after a tenua gedola, so then a shvo following a tenua gedola will be a Sheva-Na. A shvo after a tenua ktano will be a Sheva-Nach. That's the rule here. So now, coming to our question, the word dekudjא. If you vowelize the kuf with a kubutz, which is a tenua ktano, there's no question that the shvo is a Sheva-Nach, and therefore it's dekudjã, not dekudjã. So coming back into the prints where they do have vovs, well, that may be just for whatever reason. Sometimes the Kaddish is printed without nekudas, so sometimes the vov is a binkoim of the three diagonal dots, kubutz, and that's what it seems to be. Therefore, the more correct one, that it should be a Sheva-Nach, and the asterisks which were put there really don't belong there. As I'm going through this, we came to also discussion Uv-kumecho Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh. So in the regular Chabad Tilas Hashem Sidur, at least the American one, there's going to be Uv-kumecho Yisor Binyan Olam in Meshvan Esra. The vase of Uv-kumecho has got an asterisk. You open to benching Uv-kumecho Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh, the same vase does not have an asterisk. And you ask, where's consistency? So the secret is, this is just not halacha, just facts, that when it came to publishing the Tilas Hashem Sidur, I say largely they copied from the Seder HaAvodah printed in Vilna Tafresh. Certain parts where there was so much correction needed to the Vilna print that instead they took it from the Torah Or Sidur. When it came to benching, there was so much stuff which needed to be changed for whatever reason that the Tilas Hashem Sidur, that full Tilas Hashem Sholem, benching is from the Torah Or Sidur, not from the Seder Avodah Vilna Sidur. Consequently, in the Torah Or Sidur, there are no asterisks. The asterisks were Kaddish by the printer Vilna and Tafresh Ayin Aleph, whereas the Torah Or Sidur never had asterisks, as the Alter Rebbe never had asterisks in his Sidur. So Uv-kumecho Yerushalayim benching doesn't have an asterisk because it's copied from the Torah Or Sidur. And if you doubt my allegation or assertion, Simon Godel Yes Bedova, that the Tilas Hashem Sidur, following the Vilna Seder Avodah, has invariably the Hashem's name is Yud Yud. The Torah Or invariably is Yud Kei Vav Kei. Look now, take your Tilas Hashem Sidur, open up to benching, and you see there it's not Yud Yud, it's Yud Kei Vav Kei. And the answer is because that's been copied from the Torah Or Sidur, and therefore it's Yud Kei Vav Kei. Whereas the Sheva-Na is largely copied from the Seder Avodah Sidur, and therefore it's Yud Yud. Just a little bit of history. Okay. Now, since we're on to Dikduk, so I'm going to what was called a Gilgal Shua, going on to another Dikduk thing, which again came this week. So one of the teachers in school we have a Chabad teacher and there's a non-Chabad teacher, and challenging about the way you pronounce words in Shema. We're talking about young girls who are learning to daven. So is it U-veKumecho or Uv-kumecho? Is it U-veKumecho, U-keshartom, or is it U-keshartom? So this is the question. So now, the background to this is, now these are, what you have on the screen are both Chabad Sidurim. I don't know whether I've once discussed this before, but what happened is the following. There was a master bedaktik by the name of Reb Zalman Henna, a contemporary of the Baal Shem Tov, and he introduced various significant Kedoshim in the laws of Dikduk. He is not the last word, and there are others who vehemently disagree with him, most notably Rabbi Yaakov Emden, and he wrote a whole sefer of arguing, but nevertheless, Reb Zalman Henna was definitely a great master in Dikduk. He's quoted in great reverence by the Pri Megadim and others. And the Alter Rebbe seems to have also, how do you say in English, gerechensach mit him. He took him, he respected his opinion. I'm not saying he gave him a blank check, but he certainly, we see that the Alter Rebbe, like I mentioned perhaps before, Terem called Yitzur Nivra rather than Yitzir Nivra. That vowel of Yitzur Nivra is a chidush of Reb Zalman Henna, and that's in our Siddur. The Alter Rebbe accepted it. Okay. So now, Reb Zalman Henna was of the opinion that these shvoin are shvoin noin, and the printer of Vilna, Tafresh Ayin Aleph, followed the policies of Reb Zalman Henna. And for many, many years, the Kahos Sidur, Tilas Hashem, was just a reprint and another reprint and another reprint. And back in the Tofshin Mems, Reb Baruch Noah writes to the Rebbe about an issue with the Shavoin. And the Rebbe says, I don't have I don't have the person, as far as I remember, I don't have, we have bigger problems than that in the Dikduk of the Siddur, and I don't have the right person to do it, and that's why it stays the way it is. Something on those lines. The letter is published, I think, in Tzaddik Lamelech. So anyway, around 20 years ago, it was the publishers of the Kahos in Eretz Yisrael came to the point where they felt they need to retypeset the Siddur. So instead of just copying, kind of retypeset from scratch. And the head of Kahos in Eretz Yisrael, Mendel, Wolf, is a son-in-law of the late, is a son-in-law of the late Reb Mottel Schusterman. And Reb Mottel Schusterman was at the behest of the Rebbe, taught Dikduk. In 770, he was a Balchoire by the Rebbe. He was very knowledgeable in Dikduk. And somehow, Meni Wolf decided not to be beholden to Reb Zalman Henna, and instead we're going to make the new Kahos Siddur is going to be according to the rules as were taught by Reb Mottel Schusterman, which follows a policy not like Reb Zalman Henna. And therefore, if you start comparing Israeli Siddurim to American Siddurim, you're going to see a lot of differences if you are sensitive to Shvoin. And I'll tell you, I confess that I use a Torah Siddur which doesn't have any asterisks at all, because I find to get, in the middle of davening to have to start, yeah, he's right or he's wrong. Leave me alone. I just want to daven. So I just use a Siddur without any asterisk. But fine. But this is what's happened over here. So the lower screen, the lower picture is from the Israeli Siddur. And there it's Uv-kumecho, Uv-kumecho. Whereas, and that's why they are scroll also. And that seems to be the official position, the Litvische position of pronouncing Uv-kumecho, Uch-savto. However, as they say, the Reb Zalman Henna taught, and this is the way it's in the original Tilas Hashem Siddur, whatever, Tilas Hashem HaSholim, that it is a Sheva-Na. And just in case that's not so clear, I put it also on the screen the transliteration, which appears in the Tilas Hashem Siddur, and it's and you can see here Veshinantom, Vedibarto, where is it? U-veKumecho. Yeah, you see that U and then a hyphen veKumecho, U-hyphen v'shachbecho, and so on, rather than U-v-kumecho, etc. So that's the policy which has been followed. I also took the trouble to listen to a recording of Reb Mottel Schusterman as he's reading Parshas Vayischan and reading Parshas Shema, and again you can hear it's Uv-chol, Uv-shachbecho, etc. So definitely that's the way our Messiah is, to pronounce it as a Sheva-Na. And I spoke today to someone in Eretz Yisrael who has a great geschmack in Dikduk, and he corroborated that this is the view of Reb Zalman Henna. And here's an interesting point. If it were a Sheva-Nach, then it should be, let's see, of the word, then it should be uch-tavtom. It should be after a Sheva-Nach, then the tof, it should be a tof rather than a sof. If it's over-chol, if it's uv, it should be uv-kol. The fact that it is chol and it's savtom tells you that this is a Sheva-Na. And all right, so that's enough of Dikduk for this evening. Now let's go on to a question about Hilchos Shabbos. Yeah? Okay. So the bottom line is, I'm happy the way I was taught, U-veKumecho, etc. And although not everyone agrees, Art Scroll included don't agree on that. They follow the Litvische way, but this seems to be the Messiah which I was brought up with. Okay, let's go on to a new point, totally new question. So somewhere in Central Europe, last Shabbos, or was it 2 Shabbos ago, there was a debate. We've got a Shabbos-belt, and that's where you can have a key added to your Shabbos-belt. Yeah, Oh, well, that's what the Shabbos-belt is for, to be able to. Are you allowed to link in the keys into your Shabbos-belt on Shabbos, or does that have to be done before Shabbos? That was the question. And the fellow who contacted me says, why should there be a problem of incorporating the key on Shabbos? If you're talking about Marke Bepatish, you're completing the belt. Well, the belt was a complete belt before, so you're not fixing the belt. If you're going to be talking about tying, who says you have to make a kesher shel kayoma? You can make a loop, whatever. So he's asking, is there any problem of clipping those keys into position on Shabbos? And there was something in my mind which bothered me, because I remembered something the Alter Rebbe is saying it has to be done before Shabbos. Although he doesn't spell it out so clearly, but that's what we're going to be looking at. Now, so the main focus here is in Siman Shin Aleph, which is talking about carrying on Shabbos. And in the Shulchan Aruch, the new edition, Rebbe Levin, soll sein gesund, refers to an article which he had written in Ha'oras Haburim, where he'd explored this very question. And I read through the article. I'm not going to say I absorbed everything, lots of interesting stuff there. It is valuable to know that this whole business of taking a key and making it part of a belt, and several Rishonim were quite against it. I believe Rami Rutenberg is one of those, but it was not unanimous. Now let's read the Alter Rebbe's Lashon about the key. He says, that earlier we were talking about if you have a key which was made into a brooch. You took a key and you coated it with silver. Now then you've got it's got a double identity. Is it an ornament, or is it a tool to open a door? So that's a debate. When you've got something that's a dual identity, can you say, oh, it's a brooch? Or do you say, no, it's a key? That's an earlier discussion. Following on from that discussion comes this thing. Im kavua b'rosh hachagura. If it is fixed at the end of a belt. V'osri ke'ein zenkel. Now, I'm going to tell you that the brackets, which are with the yellow background, were put in by myself. In the Shulchan Aruch, as if you open it up, there are those brackets out there, and I'm going to explain to you why I put them there. But meanwhile, let's just read the halach. V'osri ke'ein zenkel. If the key is at the end of a belt, and it's made like a buckle, possibly, la gerbe. So now the key is now being used to clasp the belt. Yesh matirin, there are those who permit this. Because then it's an accessory to the belt, uvotel etzlo, and therefore it is whatever the word bottle is, but it becomes like nullified it becomes part of the belt. Then there's the added explanation, even though it's not only for the Shabbos. Let's just read those words. The Miksas Medinas Elu, as I said, not all Ashkenazim agreed with this, but the Maril was one of those who said it is okay, and that's been accepted. Okay, the Ramah follows this. The Miksas Medinas Elu, that there's a concession that a key made as part of a belt, as a part of a buckle of a belt, is okay. All right, let's now go back. Why did I put in those brackets? I want to explain. What are brackets in the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch? It's well known that the Alter Rebbe had sometimes chidushei dinim, and he put them in brackets because he wanted to perhaps come back later and review them. That's the common explanation of the brackets. Not all brackets are the same, but one rule I have with brackets in the Alter Rebbe is that the sentence has to be readable with the bracket or without the bracket. You should be able to read the sentence smoothly without the bracket, and then you can reread the sentence with the bracket. So now, let's try to read the sentence without the bracket. That does not make sense at all. That sentence does not make sense. Whereas, if you read it, if it's Barosh Hagura, and it's made, and the Ke'en Zenkel can be sometimes a translation, okay. It's made as a belt. Yesh matirin fisha ozo meshamash l'chagura or bottle etzlo. Then the Alter Rebbe adds, you know what? This belt, buckle solution is even if it's only for the one Shabbos, it's also good. So that's a chidush din, and he put it in brackets. I'm pretty convinced that that's the way the brackets should be, rather than the way it's appeared in the print. Okay, be that as it may. So now we have a chidush din, which Maril and others accepted, that if a key is made into part of a buckle, that is a heter, to wear the belt on Shabbos with the key. Simon, further on the same Simon, we look at Sifchov Gimel, talks about a handkerchief. And you know, the younger generation, if you want to see a handkerchief, you have to go into an antique shop. You might find a cloth handkerchief. Anyway, some people used to have a handkerchief in their pockets. On Shabbos, he wants to have a handkerchief. Can't carry. So he says, you're going to tie it, similar solution, to the end of the belt. Meyed of Shabbos, bekesher shel kayomo, a permanent knot. Oh, of course it has to be, if it's a permanent knot, it has to be before Shabbos. So here, by the handkerchief, it has to be a kesher shel kayomo. And here, with the key, it seems to be it's okay just for the Shabbos. Okay. Let's now go to something. Now, I put on the questions something which I may have passed wrong before, but I'm pretty sure that it's wrong. I have a pair of reading glasses, and I want to take them to shul. Can I take the reading glasses, and I have an elastic band, and I'll put the elastic band around in where, you know, the handles on either side, and then I wrap it around my waist, and there I got my glasses to shul. And come to shul, and I'll take them off the elastic, etc. Is that okay? Is that any different to using a key to hold an elastic around your waist? And here you're using a pair of glasses. Seems to be fairly innocuous, yeah? And I've already bavoren that we're not going to get away so easily with this one. And this is where Rebero Levin points this out. Earlier on in this simon, and those who are doing 3 prokim a day of Rambam will recognize this from yesterday's Shir Rambam, about a needle. Having a needle in your lapel and walking out on the street on Shabbos. Now, there's a massive chiddush here in the Alter Rebbe, and I apologize that I haven't managed to check where the other poskim follow this, but it's a massive chiddush. Because when you read a Mishnah, you're talking about a needle which is just being kept for storage. It's a convenient place under your lapel. That's called carrying a needle. But let's read what the Alter Rebbe says over here. A man who's going out with a needle which has got an eye. The needle is being used here to connect the 2 sides of your coat. You've got a jacket, you've got a chalat, and it's got 2 sides, and you want to connect them with one another instead of a button. So you put them over one another, and you put in a needle to hold it together. If it's somewhere where it's normal to do so in the weekday, if you're taking a needle and you're using it as a form of button, and he says it's considered an aveira min haTorah. It would be normal to use a pin which has got a solid head, not a needle which has got an eye. Masu Yuhuloi, now that you are improvising, instead of using a pin to hold your coat together, you're using a needle to do exactly the same thing. You're using that needle to hold your coat together, and it's considered carrying. And here's very powerful losh. She'ein odom rashai lotzeis im kol hachafetzim hatzrichim eloi, she'ein eloi da'in tachshit v'loi derech malbush. You've got something you want to transport from A to B, and you're going to use it as to hold your coat together. But it's neither tachshit nor derech malbush. It's not an ornament. It's not derech malbush, and therefore it's considered carrying. So now I ask you, reading those words, Ein odem rasha, you cannot carry stuff, go out with stuff if it's not a tachshit nor a derech malbush. A pair of glasses with a rubber band, with a elastic around your waist. I have no choice to say it's us. The Raisa, the Rabbanon, you can say it's in the bracket says that's called Hitzor Kedarko. You can say it's not Kedarko. It's a this is the Rabbanon, but there's a definitely no. Yeah, I'm very, very convinced of this. So this is Rebbe Levin asks the question: if so, if a machat, which is a needle, which is holding your coat together, is considered carrying, so why is a key holding your belt together? Why is that not called carrying? Which we have to explore. Of course, it's mutter, but we have to explore why. Reb Shlomo Zalman in Shmir Shabbos Halocho has this note, a similar type of ha'ara. There is also yesterday's Rambam. Poirefes, there's a word in Hebrew, perifo alo ego is perifo alo even. I don't know whether there's a word in English for it. But imagine I want to hold my coat together, the two sides of my coat, and I don't have any buttons. So I take a small ball-shaped item, a stone or a nut, and I gather the material around it, and now there's a bulge. And then around the bulge, I take a string and tie it around a few times, and that holds it together. That activity is called perifo. And it says you are allowed to do so with a stone, even with a nut. But then we have the following halacha. It's in Shin Gimel. The Alter Rebbe doesn't have this, missing the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch, unfortunately. A woman wants to carry a nut from A to B to give her son a nut. She's not using the nut to hold a coat together. She's using the coat to take the nut from A to B. It's not permitted. For Carmelists, it's Issa Drabonon, and therefore to a Rosh Hashanah it's not allowed. For Carmelists, it's allowed because of Shavuos Dishvos. Says the Mishnah Berurah there, Osur, to transport the nut by wrapping it around with a string, mit Rabbonon lasses came. Afshu derech malbush, vein derech hitzor bekach. You're doing shtick. You're doing shtick to carry a nut from A to B. So now we're back to the question. Why is a key any different to the nut? Why is the key any different to the machat? This is the question. So the teretz is that the story. Well, let's go with the handkerchief. It's become part of the chagura b'kesher shel kayomo. That's why it's allowed. It's become one thing with the belt. So coming back to the key, imu kavua b'rosh chaguro. It's become kavua. It was fixed before Shabbos. It was fixed into the chagura. Now, the Alter Rebbe doesn't say le Shabbos, it says be Shabbos. The word is, I think, very simple. Imagine taking today, and not today, on Shabbos, taking your buckle, opening it up, taking out the tongue, and then putting a key back in place and putting the tongue back, putting a key instead of the tongue. to do that on Shabbos, hayal el adas, to be matter such a thing, that's mamish b'takin keli. So of course it can't be done on Shabbos. Kaddish is, even though this improvisation of putting the key is instead of the tongue of the buckle is only done for the Shabbos and not kesher shekayomo, no, it's also good, also okay. But definitely the heter is only because it's become part of the chagura. Therefore, you ask, can I do so on Shabbos? Do so on Shabbos is the same as the machat. You got a key. You want to bring from A to B. You take a couple of clips or whatever, and you wrap it around your waist. You gang weiter. So that's the same thing as the machat. I don't see any heter for it. Now that's what I'm. This is my. I'll tell you. Shmir Shabbos Gilchoso says you are allowed. He's allowed. He says you are allowed to make a. You can read it here. This is Peit Yudches, Sif Memtes. And he gives us a guidance how to do it. And I'm just, if I can go to the next slide. No, it's not here, is it? He refers to Reb David Feldman's, Rav Feldman's Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. And he talks here about taking a key and putting a string through. Yeah, you've a string through, and the middle of the string is through the hole at the top of the key, and the other end goes round your waist, and then you do a loop at the end of the key. So there's Shmir Shabbos Gilchoso referring to this, and he says you're allowed to do so on Shabbos. Yeah. So this is where he says you have to take a long string, and you put it through the hole, the upper hole of the ring, and then you tie the other two ends, on Shabbos. So he seems to be allowing you to do so, to do this whole thing on Shabbos, although it's not explicit, but it's fairly evident. And the Pesach Shuvas seems to say that you're allowed to do this on Shabbos, so long as it's not a kesher shekayom. I'm totally unconvinced, because I think the heter is only because mamish it's become part of the belt from before Shabbos. In Rabbi Beryl Levin's article, he challenges also. Here talking about kavua b'resh hachagura. It's fixed into the belt. And what you're talking about, you're taking some clips. A clip here, a little a press, it's in, it's out. That's called kavua. He questions whether you can use the term kavua with the use of clips. Since I'm already onto this topic, a couple more points. If you go to Crown Heights in the hardware store and get a key made, very likely they'll make a key. They'll give you a key which has got two holes besides the main hole. And it was said that this was the Rebbe's minhag to have the two additional holes, so that the key, the top of the head of the key, should be more significant in holding it together. I've been told by families of the Rebbe's Gaboim, one of them, that's not true. The Rebbe's key did not have two holes. What else am I say? Now, one last thing. Yours truly was of the feeling that since the heter here is not unanimous, it says yes matirin, yeah, yes matirin, to use it as a buckle. How about putting the key mamish in the middle of the belt, not as a buckle? It's tied ba'ifin kavua, mekesher shekayoma. You have this key in the middle of the belt, and I felt that then you've avoided this question, because here it says if like a buckle is not so unanimous, but if it's mamish part of the belt, then it's better. Currently, my feeling is the opposite. That when it's here, at least you have a heter that it's a functional part of a belt. It's tougher to the belt. That's a shtickle heter. But if it's going to be stam and lose, keep the middle of a belt. It's not a derech levisha. It's not a derech tachshit. So what's the heter? So I'm really backtracking on that, and I know I'm going to get some flack about this, but Torah hiva little bit on itzorich. So I'm really very surprised with what I've discovered in what's going on here about the heter of using a key for a Shabbos-belt. Someone sent me just about 15 minutes ago a link to a website called The Key Belt, and it actually has, you can check it up yourself. My yeshiva training didn't tell me how to put a video into a PowerPoint, so I don't know how to put it on the video to show you the, but you can look it up, The Key Belt dot whatever, and it has actually a mamish a buckle, and it has a way of pulling out the tongue and putting in a key and putting it back in place and having the key mamish as a so instead of these little clips, it's mamish serving as a tongue of a buckle, mamish like the heter of the maharil, and that you have that's been a gashknas to be my makel, yeah. But less than that, I'm uneasy. Okay, let's move on. So we dealt with questions number 3 and number 4 together. And so now we're going on to question number 5. Does a walk-in fridge, does a walk-in fridge freezer need to have a mezuzah? So the general view is that many poskim have said that since you cannot live in a fridge, certainly not in a freezer, therefore it's not a base dira, it doesn't need to have a mezuzah. And so then I looked up, you can see the references and you have on your sheet, there is a famous discussion about a small room opens up to a big room, a small walk-in closet. I'm not talking about a closet where you stand outside and you hang your coats. A walk-in closet, a larger kind of wardrobe, doesn't need to have a mezuzah. So you've got here, it's less than dal dalet. Yeah, the shiur for a mezuzah is a building, a room which has got 4 by 4 amas. Comes along the Chamudi Doniel, who is quoted in the Pischei Tshuva in Hilchos Mezuzah, and he says the shiur of dal damas is talking about a freestanding dwelling. You have a shed or whatever, a small hut which is less than dal is not the mezuzah because it's not livable, normal, in a normal way. But you have a big house, a normal sized house, and off it there's a room which is a wardrobe, a pantry, whatever. It's a room, it's part of the house. Is it part of a dwelling? Yes. So he says that's not exempt from mezuzah because it's part of a larger dwelling. It's a function of the dwelling. He says that's what it does. That's the B'chamud Doniel. Then we have Rebbe Kiva Eger in the same space in the Shulchan Aruch, and he has a different argument. He says, true, the small room does not require a mezuzah, but the door, he called the word kemechi. It's in his German Yiddish small room. But the kemeche, the door of the kemeche is a door to the room. It's a door to the kemeche, it's a door to the little room, it's also a door to the big room. So it needs to have a mezuzah because it's a door to the big room. So these are two arguments to oblige having a mezuzah on a smaller room, less than dal when it's part of a larger building. Now coming back, now we're talking about the fridge, even the fridge. Now nothing to do with how big the fridge is. What are you telling me? The fridge is unlivable, but it's part of a building, part of a house. It's part of a moisid. The building is a livable building. It's a function of that building. So the fact that you can't spend a long time, you can't live in the fridge, is the same thing as the pantry, which is less than dal, but it's a part of the function of the house. So it's chayiv b'mezuzah. Then we take Rebbe Kiva Eger's approach, and he says, well, it's a door to the fridge, but it's also a door to the kitchen, whatever. It's a door to the larger room. So bottom line is that despite you cannot live inside a fridge, certainly not in a freezer for a prolonged period, but there are arguments that you should put up a mezuzah, and so this seems to be the later consensus that you should put up a mezuzah without a brocha because it's not unanimous. Okay. One last point about that was, although normally the mezuzah is put inside the door frame, if the door frame is inside the fridge or the freezer, I don't know whether the cold temperature would cause damage to the mezuzah over a longer period. I don't know. I don't know how mezuzahs cope with extreme weather. And because of that, I advise them to put the mezuzah on the outside rather than in the inside of the fridge. We have one last point which I wanted to share with you. Also, as someone sent me, this is somewhere in Midwest America, but it's the same Torah everywhere. And that is the following. We have here, it's not a very clear picture. We have here sliding doors, and these are to the outside. So what you see here seems to be these wooden pieces seem to be like an overhang sticking out beyond the house. It's doors to the outside. Now we have a rule of heker tzir. We have a rule that the way the door swings, that's going to dictate what's the inside and what's the outside. And we have a general rule about that. What about a sliding door, which doesn't swing in, doesn't swing out? So here we have Rabbi Yaakov Emden came along with a chiddush, which I think is fairly logical, that you have a door between, let's say, the dining room and the kitchen. There's a doorway and there's a sliding door. And he says, where is the track where the door is sliding? Does the door slide on the dining room side, or does it the door on the kitchen side? So let's clarify. The doorway is 90 centimeters wide. The door is a meter wide, 900 centimeters wide. So the door is either sliding on the one side of the wall or the other side of the wall. So the side where the track is, where the door is sliding, he says that's the heker tzir. Just like the tzir, the hinge is where the hinge is, if it's on the interior, that's considered the interior. So the same thing if the track where the door travels, where the door slides, that's the interior. Okay, that's Rabbi Yaakov Emden. Now we have, however, the following. Here we have two doors. We've got two doors next to one another. One of these doors is rigid, it doesn't slide. The other one does slide. So now you're going to take the Rabbi Yaakov Emden's svara and say, oh, which side is the sliding one? The inside one or the outside one? And that's going to dictate which side you better put the mezuzah, the right side, which side is the right side. Just to make things more complicated, in the same room, there's two sets of doors. And one, the carpenter, when he put in the door, he put the rigid one on the outer side and the moving one on the inside. And the other one, it's the opposite, that the inner one is the rigid one and the outer one is the sliding one. Are you going to tell me that that's going to make a difference where it's called derech halicha, one way or the other? I find it very difficult to take Rabbi Yaakov Emden's chiddush so far and to say that to apply it in such a case. I find it not very convincing. Generally, sometimes I'll tell you to put up a mezuzah on the right as you go to the garden. There is such a thing. But in principle, mezuzahs are more for houses than for gardens. And therefore, I'm more inclined to say, put the mezuzah on the right as you enter from the open air to the house. That seems to be more correct, rather than making a whole pilpul, which is heker tzir, based upon Rabbi Yaakov Emden, etc. In the Chiddush, Chabad will follow heker tzir. I'm not so confident with all of that in this case, and I'd prefer to say, put the mezuzah on the right as you come in from the outside. Now, if you're looking at this picture carefully, you can see where I'm pointing now. That's part of the rigid panel. And the mezuzah has to be on that edge of the rigid panel, not at the far end, and at the far left, should we say, or the far right, whichever when you're coming from the outside, because as far as I'm concerned, the rigid panel is a wall. And you can't walk through walls. A Pesach is where you walk through. So where the door is opening and allowing you to walk through, that's called Pesach. Where the door is not allowing you to go through, that is going to be called wall, and therefore the mezuzah has to be at the edge of the walk-through area, and therefore it's going to be on the edge of the rigid panel where it abuts the open space where you can walk through. I'm going to stop here because I want to get into shul in time for Ma'ariv at 9:30. And meanwhile, I wish you a wonderful Shabbos. I want you to hear Besuras Tovis from Achenu Bnei Yisrael, Be'eretz HaKodesh, especially the Shvuyim, Be'eretz Azo, and Be'ikar Geula, with Mashiach Tzidkenu, B'meiru Yameinu Mamish, Chatchila.
Amen. Yasher koyach.